Welcome, Charles. Thanks so much for joining me today. And while all businesses were getting impacted due to the coronavirus and they were feeling significant impact, your team had a great run, first winning the Ignite grant and then signing this historic agreement with Mawicit First Nations, which first of its kind for using your software for land management and stewardship. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Let's start from the very beginning. LlamaZoo is such an interesting name. What's the story behind it?
Yeah, it's an interesting story. First, thanks again for having me, Nirad. It's been following your website for a while now, and I'm happy to be on it. LlamaZoo, yeah. Usually I reserve this story for telling over a drink, or it's more of a social setting, but we'll have to do with the video conferencing with COVID and share it out to the world this way.
Yeah.
So the name actually started kind of as an homage to our forebears, but there's also kind of a funny tale behind it.
Okay.
It involves a llama poking his head through a window and coffee being spilt everywhere, and me falling on my back and being like, somebody's got to put these llamas in a zoo. And but why it stuck was, like the games that we grew up with and a lot of the software and source code that we would see had mentions of like llama, just quirky little Easter eggs strewn throughout. And it was, for us, it's an homage to our forebears. And yeah, that's really ultimately what it is. They're
yeah. No, it definitely is kind of a icebreaker conversation starter. It's such a unique name. You were having such a successful career as a game designer, working for some of the most well-known gaming companies in the world. What put you on a path of entrepreneurship then?
Well, I think for me, I always was on that path. And, going back to my childhood, I was always looking for ways to try to build something, right? It was always like my play was projects. My mom would say, "What are you doing?" And I'd say, "I'm working." It's kind of funny, and she makes fun of me for that today, because it's like I've never stopped working my entire life. But games for me were a passion, and it was like the crash course. That 12 years working in the industry was like the deepest crash course in these fast moving technologies and trends, and ultimately, after being exposed to so much of the game industry, I wanted to take the expertise and the knowledge and the experience that we had put together, Kevin and I, and apply it to real world problems.
Okay.
And we just knew that this type of technology, real-time visualization and simulation and AI and scalable systems and networked infrastructures and all this kind of stuff could have a huge impact when applied to other sectors, right? And if you look at LlamaZoo's history, that's kind of what we've historically done. We started in education with medical imaging data, and have really broadened the application to mining and forestry and manufacturing, and now lands management with the work we're doing with the Mocha Muchalat. And all of this is really stems back to this platform that we've been developing for the last 6 years, and the flexibility of the platform for fusing, analyzing, and visualizing big data.
Yeah. So take us through your journey. You mentioned the iterations your product went through, but also your journey as an entrepreneur, the challenges you faced, and especially with team, the product, and what has gotten you here.
It's the biggest lesson that I learned was you have to listen to your customers, right? And the closer you can be to your customers, the more tight-knit, or the more access you have to your customers, the better you can craft value and deliver value to your customers. And so that for us was something that took us a few years to really understand, and for me is very it was a very dear lesson because, 2 years in the startup world is feels like 10 years, right? It's a long time.
Yeah, the technology especially. Digital twinning is proving to be such a promising technology when it comes to IoT design, preventive maintenance. Can you break down the key aspects of this technology for us and also what the future would look like?
Yeah, I mean, a really important facet of our platform is federated data sources. And
Okay.
so our approach is to actually build integrations to the existing data sets and tools
Mhm.
and not replace, those subject matter expert tools that are used for generating data, right? Whether it's plans or designs or analysis, right? So by connecting to those data sources, we support the existing ecosystem and create a new access point that aggregates the different data sources together to create a new data set.
Okay.
Key aspects also include, cloud computing from, cloud storage and the infrastructure around all that, but also GPU streaming, the compute itself for applying AI and data analysis and data ETL. And then, APIs is a really big piece of technology. Most people don't think of it as a technology, but it really allows us to integrate and create connections with, kind of an IP firewall. And
Yeah.
that's really important when working on large collaborations like, say, the supercluster, of which we've been working with a number of companies on the project there.
Mhm.
And kind of having those API integrations allows us to have a clear delineation of, what is the IP that we've built and what is the IP that you've built and how do we
Yeah.
talk to each other and
Yes.
exchange data.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you've got AI, you've got various forms of AI from deep learning to machine learning to computer vision and connected sensors, which goes as broad as, the satellites in the sky with all of
Yeah.
their sensors to drones to actual, facility and machinery sensors
Yeah.
and the interconnection of all of that and the massive amounts of data that these sensors are creating
Yeah.
all needs to be processed somehow, aggregated somehow, and analyzed somehow, right? And then once you have the analysis, how do we consume that as humans? How do we interpret it? We're not at the point yet where we can trust machines to make these decisions for us blindly,
Yeah.
right? So we need human buy-in and intervention, right? Which visualization is the most powerful tool for achieving that because we can consume about 60,000 times more information using our eyes or frontal cortex
Yeah.
than we can from written word or text, right? So the 2D dashboard is a very rudimentary means of communicating information. And then, of course, there's spatial computing. I can go on from AR, VR to spatial cameras and sensors and all of those paradigms. So, LlamaZoo works in all of these fronts of technology and is kind of, I just love it because it's everything that we read about, everything that we talk about, we get to explore, even how does blockchain fit into all this, right? Like we use the Lightning network to, connect data
Yeah.
and allow data sharing between different parties, right? So you have one entity, let's say a forestry company that's paid money to acquire satellite imagery and LiDAR data. How do we make that available to First Nations? Or how do we make data that's been captured by the government available to other entities and all this kind of stuff in a safe and, in a safe manner that is also protective of the maybe data sensitivity.
Yeah. Coming back to your journey as an entrepreneur, what were the lessons learned so far? And what would you advise to entrepreneurs, innovators who are trying to break new grounds, trying to innovate something new? What would you advise them?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say the biggest lesson, which I kind of mentioned earlier, is listen to your customers, and your customers are really going to tell you what they need and what they want. It's one thing to assume, but what our job is as entrepreneurs is to actually interpret what their problems are
Yeah.
and find a solution that creates value,
Yeah.
right? Or create a solution that creates value. And over time we can start kind of getting a broader scope and feel of the market and start projecting or predicting where the market is going.
Yeah.
But to do that very early without fully understanding your clients is incredibly risky, and you can spend a lot of time spinning your wheels trying to figure out how
Yeah.
to deliver value. Yeah.
The biggest, I think, dilemma that all founders deal with is the product idea that they have in mind versus what the client wants. I think that's where it kind of it's why, and then you have to bring it together.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other tricky thing is, as an entrepreneur, we have to wear many hats, and it's always tempting to gravitate towards the thing that is interesting or shiny or new or exciting. But really, ultimately, as humans, we're only capable of doing the best job we can when we
Yeah.
focus on what we're best at,
Yeah.
right? And so it's always a tricky balance to kind of you know juggle all of the needs of
Yeah.
growing a business and finding new clients and all of this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so the sooner you can get experts in at what they do, whether it's business development or communications or managing a team and
Mhm.
all this kind of stuff, the better you and your organization will be, and so will your employees.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much, Charles. Really appreciate your time, and wishing you all the success in coming years. And stay safe, and let's stay connected.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you again.